Hello, YouTube. Uh, whoops, wrong channel. Please stop. Discord. Man, it's pretty seconds since I've done a live stream like my regular streams. Sometimes I'll just do I know I did like a little special one the other day, but let me go ahead here. I may not stream very long because I may go read a book after this. And then yeah, so I'm probably gonna keep it to an hour tonight. Um, let me turn my brightest down. This laptop is way too bright. How's everyone been though? How's everyone's week? Hope everyone had a good week. Oh, man, I need to check the expandinguniverse.com. I have not done that. I don't read the articles or watch the videos. I will sometimes. I've been enjoying Marcel and Matt's Missed Opportunity series on expandinguniverse.com. So it's one of the best places to find somewhat new EU, meaning it's not new stories, but it's, I don't know, the closest thing to it, I guess. It's just people talking about the EU in interesting ways. So actually interesting too because the latest missed opportunities that Marcel and Matt did was about Kyle Katarn, and I was actually just playing Jedi Academy before I logged back on here, or before I started streaming. I'm playing through um that game again. It's pretty good. I love that game. A lot of a lot what I like about that game is just how much EU is in. I mean, literally Bakura is in the game. So Bakura, Vijun, I think Chandrilla makes an appearance too. Of course, Yavin 4, the Academy on there. Um, so I'm gonna invite Brennan. I don't think he hasn't been on one of my streams in a while. I'd like to have him back on. You know, he's offline on Discord. He probably won't join then. Maybe Greyholm too. I can invite him too. Well, he's probably at school. Yeah, he's probably at school. And I'm off tomorrow. I'm off. I picked up a shift Sunday because we only had one server Sunday night, so I'm gonna kind of even it out, I guess. We got the Brony.
Hey guys, what's up?
The Brony is here, the legendary Brony.
How you guys doing?
Big fan.
Yeah,
Start cutting out.
I'm Rave Blitz. If you don't know me, I'm the guy who defended Matt Wilkins a long time ago.
I actually have no
So,
idea what you're talking about, to be honest. But I'm a new
oh,
Matt fan. New Matt.
it's a kind of a long story. Um, are you familiar with B Level
Yes.
and Dark Snovia?
Yes.
Well,
Yeah,
they
I
had
I, I know
a
about the drama, but I don't
yeah.
know the specifics.
I'll basically give you the TLDR version. They had a podcast a long time ago where they were basically trashing Matt, assuming that he had joined the fandom menace. So I basically, you know, uh, went in there and I essentially made a whole video defending Matt against them. And they said, "Hey, do you want to come on our podcast?" And I said, "Sure." But I started to realize that they were basically just using me as a scapegoat, I guess, to trash on Matt. So I left their little group, and this was
Understood.
back.
Yeah,
This was all,
that
yeah,
video is actually familiar. I've seen it before. So
yeah.
I just
It's
didn't
on
connect
my
it that
channel.
that was you. I
Yeah.
see. Yeah, I'm on your channel right now.
So
Yeah, that whole, he joined the Menace is ridiculous. But
yeah,
he
it's
made
not true.
he's friends with them. He's friends with Jeremy and Ryan, but he's not a
Right.
part of the Menace.
Yeah, I even pointed that out in my video. I was like, just because somebody's friends with somebody from a certain group doesn't mean they're part of that group.
Right.
That's what
No,
D-Level and his goons failed to realize or understand.
it's interesting because I think B level he's basically off the face of the internet. And
Yeah, he's no
then
longer around.
Dark Zenobia, there was one time he had came on. Well, he was commenting on one of Matt's streams. It was one of his. This was a couple years ago,
Yeah.
and he said, "I'm sorry, Matt, for everything. Do you forgive me?" I don't know. I don't know if you knew about that. Um,
Oh,
well, I don't remember exactly what he said. This was a couple years ago, 2021, I think.
I see.
Um, so I couldn't show you those messages if I wanted to, but
Yeah, no worries.
yeah. So unless I spend 3 hours looking through his live streams, but I'm not going to do that. So nobody has time for that.
Yeah,
But yeah, so
I used to be friends with Dark Synovia for a time, and then I found out he was kind of a jerk. So I was like, yeah, I think I'm good.
yeah, his Dark Zenobia, he doesn't know who I am, and that's fine. But I found this community out kind of through him. This was when I was first starting to watch the EU. I started watching his older videos first, and then through him, I found out about Matt Wilkins, and
Oh yeah,
now of course I still didn't. Now I preferred Matt because Matt was a lot more.
kind.
He wasn't as vulgar as Dark Zenobia was about Star Wars. Dark Zenobia is just "Rah!" about Star
Yeah,
Wars. Matt was never like that. So that's why I always that's why I liked him a lot more. Plus Matt had said things like, I don't care if you're a Disney fan, you're more than welcome to love it, which at the time I was a Disney fan.
yeah.
Now I'm
That's what I
not,
like about
but
that's what I personally like about Matt. He's very welcoming to people, and he doesn't try to make enemies, and he's very very friendly.
right. And I think Dark Zenobia, he hated on Disney fans, which is ironic too, because he also made a video. Yeah, the Star Wars fandom is toxic now. Yet he's over here hating on Disney fans. But
It's ironic,
it
very
it's very
ironic.
ironic, very ironic. He's part of the reason why it's so toxic now, especially the EU side of things.
You know
Um,
who I actually
hey,
always wanted to meet, but I never got a chance to? I've
who?
always wanted to become friends with Jen Sarai because he seemed like a cool dude.
Does he still make videos? Didn't he stop
Oh
making
yeah,
videos?
no, Jen, he still makes videos. Uh, he and
Yeah, I've
uh,
never.
he and Evan Nova still make videos. Grey Jedi 91 sadly doesn't anymore, and I'm not sure if Antoine Vandelay does anymore. He probably still does, but I'm not sure. But I know Grey Jedi 91 doesn't make videos anymore. His last
Jin
video was like
Sarai's
2 years
last
ago.
video was his last video was 5 months ago.
Oh wow. So yeah, I guess he's been
Um,
absent too. I do know Evan Nova still makes videos.
Didn't he say some like things like, yeah, like Clone Wars is an EU and stuff like that? That's just not true.
Well,
Or am
see,
I wrong?
some EU fans have beef with TCW, and it's understandable, and I kind of do too. I mean, I kind of flip back and forth between liking it and hating it. So I'm kind of mixed on the Clone Wars personally.
Oh,
But
it's no. I think Jinster I was saying it's not a part of the EU, which is just wrong.
well, some EU
That doesn't
fans
mean
some EU fans don't want to consider it part of the EU, even though it is, because it creates a bunch of continuity errors and problems with canon. So that's why they usually tend to keep it out of their personal timeline, I guess. Even though it is part of both canons, sadly. But, we do what we can with the retcons.
well, I just ignore it, but I don't know.
Because it's kind of hard to squeeze in TCW anyway with Legends, because it creates a lot of problems with continuity.
Right.
Because unless you really get in there and rearrange the timeline and try to come up with explanations, it's really hard to explain away some things.
I think there are some things like I've always kind of like Dathomir stuff. Always imagined that the Night Sisters had another world, which they also call Dathomir. That looked. I
That's a
always
little
considered that
confusing,
just
though.
sort of a different world. Yeah, but I don't know. Maybe it had a different name too.
See,
But the
my
Night
my
Sisters.
whole thing with it is I actually came up with a little retcon of my own, I guess, and it's to say that Talzin shrouded the planet in red mist during the Clone Wars and made the Night Sisters more mysterious.
I've thought about that too. That it
And
was
it
made
makes it kind
mainly
of makes
doing
sense when you think
Talzin.
about it.
Yeah, she was she was a very powerful witch. So that kind of is very
It gives
possible.
credibility. It gives it's an easy explanation uh, to I guess you could say confirm the differences in depictions. I guess.
And you could even take it a step further. Maybe she did that to, so the Separatists or the Republic wouldn't use that world as a base of some kind.
Yeah.
Just, to keep the war away from the planet,
The only
which I think
downside
makes sense
is
too.
the only downside is it was established in prior material that the Night Sisters didn't really interact with anybody. They didn't have any bases or anything. They didn't have, they were pretty isolated from the galaxy during several wars and the Clone Wars, even to an extent. So it's kind of weird that they're more active in TCW, but whatever.
Well, even then, like the Night Sisters, they still were pretty isolated. They were active when they had to be, but
Yeah.
for the most part, they were still pretty isolated. There wasn't a whole lot of them in TCW. They weren't really well known.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't think that's a big deal.
I think it's established somewhere in prior material that they didn't really interact with Darth Sidious, though. So I'm not sure. I'll have to brush up on my lore.
May have, but that doesn't mean the rest of them did.
Yeah.
So I don't really think that's a big problem. The Mandalore thing, I mean, that's kind of easy. It's just the different parts. There's different Mandalorian sects. There was, what Satine was doing, and
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's
I don't think
tricky.
that's a
It
big
can get
problem either.
tricky.
The Evan Peel thing, you can just call that Clone Wars propaganda at this point. That's probably the best way you can do that.
Or just
I've
ignore.
always thought that in the book in Coruscant Nights, maybe they thought it was Evan Peel, but it was just another Jedi of the same species. I haven't read that book though, so I don't know how that could work.
I tend to just ignore that episode personally because if you just ignore the episode, then it's fine.
Well,
because each clone,
kind of can't though,
thankfully,
because it is canon.
well, here's the thing though. each Clone Wars episode was standalone, so you could easily skip over them. I mean, yeah, that there was a couple arcs here and there, but for the most part, the series had standalone episodes that you could easily skip.
That's true.
Yeah, it's
I did
tricky.
like those episodes of the Citadel stuff. I did think that was pretty interesting.
Yeah,
It was a good arc, but obviously with the Evan Peel thing, that's kind of, I don't know. Either you really only have two ways to fix it. Either that was Clone Wars propaganda by the Empire, or that wasn't really Evan Peel and Coruscantites.
yeah.
So
I tend to put TCW into secondary canon. That way, the prior EU Clone Wars material can stay intact, because then you could say with any changes, those changes are non-canon. Because if you put it in S canon, then it makes a lot more sense.
see, Scott Johnston would disagree with you because I don't know exactly what he says because go ahead. He defines secondary canon a lot differently than that. I don't.
Yeah,
Secondary canon makes no sense to begin with, so I keep it where it's at in T canon, and I just look over it. So
I personally prefer the multimedia project myself,
oh yeah,
and I
yeah, I
use
think everybody does.
my personal guide to the Clone Wars would be the New Essential Chronology. That's what I use for Clone Wars material, because it basically gives you the pretty much the timeline prior to Filoni's Clone Wars and how it was set up.
Very interesting.
And it essentially gives you the original origins of Ventress, and Maul didn't exist, and it ties into the 2003 Clone Micro series. It has stuff from in there. It has the Battle of Jabeam, all that kind of stuff. Now, if Ahsoka was Plo Koon's Padawan, then that would have been a lot better. Because
Yeah, he doesn't really have a Padawan in the EU, does he? I don't think he does.
I don't remember. I'll have to look. Yeah, I was doing a bit of research on the EU the other day, and I actually found out some very interesting things that I kind of knew about before, but now I know a lot. So apparently, Saris, the Dark Jedi from Dark Forces 2, was in A New Hope. Did you know that?
What's up? I'm sorry.
I said Saris, the Dark Jedi from Jedi Knight, was in A New Hope.
Oh yeah, I remember you sent that, something like that.
Yeah. It's kind of cool, huh? I mean, yeah, it's a retcon, but I thought it was cool. This is a neat little Easter egg, even though it was a retcon.
It's true.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I wish TCW didn't exist, but
Yeah. I think honestly we didn't really need it. It wasn't necessary per se, because we already had 3 years of material covering the Clone Wars already. I mean, we had the books, we had some of the video games, we had a really excellent comic series called Republic, and we also had the micro series, which tied into episode 3. So as far as I'm concerned, I don't need any more Clone Wars material. That story's already done for me.
like TCW, the TCW's propaganda idea, yeah.
I do too.
Ahsoka would have been. Go ahead.
I agree. Good games. She would have been better if she was Plo Koon's apprentice.
I think I'm gonna go ahead and load up some SWOTOR. We're gonna play that during
SWTOR,
the
huh?
stream. Yeah.
I haven't played SWTOR in a long time.
Oh, I play it almost every day. I love the game.
I kind of fell out of it because I'm not really a fan of MMOs much, even though it's the only Legends content that's continuing.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Now I wonder. I hope this doesn't. See, I don't know why it's flickering like that. Is it flickering still?
It's
Great.
lagging,
Okay, yeah,
and
we're
yes,
gonna
it's
go ahead.
also flickering. Yeah, it's probably your what you're
Okay, we're gonna
using.
stop that then. Stop sharing.
Yeah.
I don't know what the problem is. I don't games don't ever. I would love to stream games like SWOTOR, but it don't ever want to work for me. So
Hmm.
I'm just gonna stop.
Are you using OBS or what are you using?
I was just using StreamYard to share my screen.
Yeah. It tends to lag on games, I noticed.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. Do we have anyone else joining our stream today, or is it just us?
It's just us for now. I think maybe a little too early. I don't know why. It's 8 o'clock for me.
6 o'clock for me, p.m. I just
Everybody's
ate
out
dinner.
eating. Okay, I don't close.
I'm kind of curious if you guys are going to have Matt today, because that'd be cool. I've been wanting to talk to him again.
Yeah, it's about 8 o'clock for him too. We have the same time. He lives only a few hours from me. He doesn't live very far from me.
Nice.
So
That's cool.
we've talked about meeting up somewhere. Probably I don't know where, but we talked about it.
Yeah. By the way, did you see my little rant that I posted on the general chat and the Discord?
Which one?
The one with the tweet that somebody compared Star
Oh,
Wars to the MCU.
I mean, yeah, that's what it's leading to.
Uh,
Thrawn is your Thanos. I mean, it's just sad. Yeah, I mean, it's.
yeah, George Lucas even said it's going in a direction that he didn't intend with a particular clip. He says the verse 6 are very much his, but he never intended for Star Wars to go this way. And in truth, he was right, because what people don't understand is Star Wars isn't like a Hollywood franchise. It's more of a independent film series with an expanded universe.
Well, apparently not anymore.
Hmm.
Star Wars is dying.
In fact, Star Wars, from what I've seen of the Ahsoka series, because I saw like a few clips and I saw part of an episode, and I was like thinking in my mind, I'm like, this does not feel like Star Wars. Like it's not shot like Star Wars. It doesn't, the atmosphere doesn't feel like Star Wars. It just looks like something like it looks like a Marvel TV show.
Yeah.
Because, what people don't understand is, George Lucas had a very specific style book when it came to Star Wars. He based the original trilogy initially on, Flash Gordon and avant-garde cinema and all these other things from the 30s and 40s, stuff that he grew up on. And even the prequels, the prequels are stylized in a way that, aren't in the mainstream.
Right.
So and a good friend of mine even, pointed this out in one of his in some of his Star Wars videos. He goes by the name of Rick Worley. I highly recommend his channel, by the way. It's great. He's very knowledgeable when it comes to talking about film and stuff he likes. So he's very, very, very well sophisticated and eloquent, I should say, too. He knows his film history too, which is good.
I know the very basics of film history. I mean, not like the specifics, but I know basically film was discovered on accident. I know that.
Mm-hmm.
Or not really, yeah. So, do you know that story?
Which story?
The first, not really first, basically some guy had taken a bunch of photographs of a horse.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's how film was discovered.
Yeah, and it was also there was this guy who coined the term pure cinema in the 20s, and all it is basically editing and just juxtaposition of sequential images in time. It's essentially what pure cinema is. And pure cinema, basically in the 30s and 40s, even in the 20s, it was an art form unto itself. And that's what Lucas actually inspired to do. He inspired to do experimental films because he's an experimental filmmaker. A lot of people like to compare Star Wars to Hollywood movies when they're not really Hollywood movies, and that's I believe the whole crux of the issue when it comes to modern Star Wars.
Right.
That Disney and current day Lucasfilm, don't really understand what George's overall style and vision was when he made those movies.
That's
You know
right.
what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's become more of a
Star Wars
corporate.
kind of sucks now.
It's become more of a corporate, thing made by committee rather than someone else's vision.
Right.
In fact, that reminds me. Do you guys mind if I can stream a video here? To kind of
Stream whatever you
elaborate
want.
on what I'm talking about. Yeah, and this is
Stream
a
whatever you
short.
want.
Yeah, this is a short little video that my friend Rick Worley made, and he actually ranked the Star Wars films essentially based on how close they are to Lucas's vision. See if I can share my screen here.
Uh-oh, he left. Well, Ray, you left. There he is.
Sorry about that. I accidentally clicked off the window.
Rip.
All right, hold on a second. I'm having technical difficulties here, so give me a minute. I think you'll like this video actually, Lance. It's very informative, very well written. 1 second. So let me see if I can share my screen. Can you see it?
I see it.
Yeah, let me know if you can hear it at all. If there's audio.
I cannot hear it.
There's no audio?
Nope.
Let's see. How do I? Sir, let me go to settings real quick. Audio. Speaker. Is there a way to? Hold on a sec. Here, why don't you try streaming it? Because you might get audio. I'll send you the video link.
And he goes out of his time again.
All right, but I keep clicking on. 1 second.
Send it to me.
Said sorry about that. I keep clicking off the window.
It's okay.
Yeah. I have an idea. Let me see. StreamYard. Is there a way to allow it to?
I'm not sure.
Let me see here. Can you hear audio on the video, or is it? Let me know if you can hear audio.
I can hear it.
You can or can't?
I can't.
It's really weird.
I agree.
Well, here, I'll send you the link, and then I'll let you stream it, because you might get audio. So let me try that. Hold on 1 second. I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. Sorry about that. So yeah, here's the video link. Let me see if you can stream it with sound. Possibly. Can you stream it?
About the relative merits.
There we go.
Longer series of Star Wars videos, I talk a lot about the relative merits of the different episodes, what I think they're trying to accomplish, how successful they are, and how I think that you're supposed to.
Are we gonna watch the whole video?
Well, we can watch some of it. We don't have to watch the whole thing.
So by doing that, I've given a lot of thought to how I would rank the Star Wars movies by those criteria. The Star Wars episodes that Lucas made are actually kind of hard for me to rank because I think part of what kept the series so engaging was that they're all meant to work as a piece and interconnect as one movie, but at the same time, they're all very different. Something that's really incredible to me is that he never stopped building and expanding the world he was making right up until the end, which is part of why I think that easily the best of his 6 Star Wars movies is Revenge of the Sith. I talk a lot in my other video about all the things that are going on in Revenge of the Sith, and it really is an incredibly intricate movie. So just to sort of explain why I admire it so much, I want to mostly focus here on one scene, or really mostly one shot, which is the first shot. This shot is such a brilliant idea because the first Star Wars is such an iconic opening shot. There's really not much of a way to top it, except for maybe you could just go, do bigger and bigger ships every time. If the 6 movies are meant to work as one, then you don't want to do that because then the opening of episode 4 wouldn't be exciting because it would be let down compared to the other bigger ships. So the other episodes have really beautiful and interesting opening shots, but they're mostly quieter. We don't get another big action opening shot like A New Hope. So what he does here is instead of having a big ship come over the camera, when he does his traditional tilt down, the camera tilts down onto a ship. And it's a big, impressive shot, and you get a good idea of the scale when he starts to follow the little Jedi starfighters, and you think you've seen the big reveal. Then he does this big roll off of the first ship, and suddenly you realize that the big reveal wasn't really the big reveal, and suddenly, by surprise, you're in the middle of this exponentially bigger battle. What's amazing to me about this first battle here in this first shot is that we're now in the final episode of the series, and he's already invented so many things. He's already got enough ships and things to fill 10 movies. But instead of coasting, he invents more in this battle than in any of the other space battles. I mean, if you think about it, there's honestly more originality and design work in this one shot and in this opening battle than there has been so far in the entire Disney Star Wars era. For the first time, we get to see a new kind of space battle, which is these big capital ships fighting with each other. And rather than darting around like little fighters, they pull up alongside each other and fire cannons at their sides like big pirate ships. It's such a cool idea, and it could have been a whole other set piece, but it's in just a few shots. We also get the new Jedi Starfighters, which are a midpoint between the Jedi Starfighters in Attack of the Clones and the TIE Fighters and the X-Wings, and it shows you in one little design the connections between all these different factions in the 2 trilogies. We also get to see the Separatist army for the first time, their capital ships, the Vulture droids. He introduces Buzz droids, which are such a great little idea for a way that the droid army might think of to fight a space battle. I mean, just the endless inventiveness here is really astonishing, and this is the first minute of the movie. It does seem like Lucas really did think that this would be his last Star Wars movie, because you can see him throughout this movie basically like emptying out his notebooks. Every idea he's come up with that he liked, he tries to fit in here. So in something like Order 66, we get 5 planets in a row for a few shots each, and really each one of them could have been half a movie. That he manages to do all of this and then also tie up all the stories of so many characters and bridge the 2 trilogies together into a whole, and then also to focus the whole thing tightly around Anakin's story, which is pretty compelling and brilliantly done, by the way. I mean, even the people who hate the prequels mostly seem to admit that it's pretty great the way Palpatine manages to rope in Anakin subtly. That Lucas manages to pull off all that other stuff and then also put in all the designs and planets and everything else in this movie is just pretty amazing. And I don't think that he gets enough credit for that. And that's also part of the reason why, for me, Return of the Jedi is just about as good as Star Wars gets. I don't think Lucas gets nearly enough credit for how he sticks the landings in these trilogies. Like Revenge of the Sith, Return of the Jedi focuses very smartly on the story of Luke and Vader, and I think it gives them a pretty brilliant and emotionally resonant conclusion. But then, just like in Revenge of the Sith, Lucas already has enough stuff here from the previous movies to fill up another trilogy, but instead of repeat himself, he decides to invent more and more than in either of the last 2 episodes. I mean, this episode introduces Palpatine, it gives us the speeder bike chase, which is great. It gives us Jabba and his palace and enough creature designs right there for a whole other trilogy. I remember when I was a kid, my mom would say it was time for bed, and I would ask to watch Return of the Jedi. And if she said no, my bargaining strategy was to say I just wanted to watch the Jabba parts. And that really was what I wanted to watch. The first part of the movie with the Rancor and the Sarlacc and all the creatures and everything, that was easily my favorite part of the whole trilogy when I was a kid. And not to mention, on top of that, we also get the Ewoks. And if you don't like the Ewoks, hey, fuck you. I mean, your cold, dead heart is your problem, not the movie. movies. So A New Hope is hard for me to rank because almost everything that it did great, one of the other episodes did as well or better. But this did them first. And viewed in isolation, if the other 5 movies had never been made, this movie would still be a landmark in film history. It's one of those movies like Hitchcock's Vertigo where the movie gods just came together and somehow every single thing in the movie came out better than anybody could have expected. You know, with Vertigo, it's Hitchcock's genius that brings everything together, but all in one movie. He just happened to have Bernard Herrmann write one of the greatest film scores of all time. He had Saul Bass do the opening titles, which were as good as any movie. And he had one of the great costume designers with Edith Head. Just every single part of the movie is superlative. And then with A New Hope, Lucas had John Williams write one of the greatest scores of all time. He just had Ralph McQuarrie there to design a dozen of the most iconic costumes of all time and create matte paintings and ships and environments that were all good enough to sell toys for 40 years. I mean, this movie is so ingrained in our minds now. The element of surprise is hard to remember, but if you think of how many individual things in this movie would be historic pieces of design work all on their own, it's kind of mind-boggling to imagine that they all just appeared out of the blue in one little sci-fi movie that most people didn't even think would be a success. It makes me feel really old now to remember clearly what it was like to see this movie when it came out and have to explain to people who have already forgotten or who weren't born yet. But it was pretty incredible. I mean, this movie is a balancing act with how many things it's trying to set up for the other movies, and it's pretty amazing that it manages to do all of them in such a graceful way that it looks easy and people just think it's a simple kids movie. They get upset at how simple-minded they think it is. The kid movie aspects are there on the surface for a reason, but underneath it's building a whole world. And a lot of people don't understand or couldn't be bothered to understand that that's what it was all about. This is supposed to be the first episode, and it's meant to introduce everything. It's laying the groundwork for Lucas's big 13-hour epic. And the backlash that's been a cloud over it for all this time is a fiction created by a certain group of older fans that grew up with the first movies and wanted this to be all about them, not about the 6-part story Lucas was making. The revisionist history around Attack of the Clones makes me feel old too, because now people seem to try to say that it's worse than Phantom Menace, whereas at the time when it first came out, most people were saying, oh, well, at least it's so much better than Phantom Menace. People at the time, they liked Jango Fett, they liked the Clone Troopers, they loved seeing a big battle with all the Jedi in action for the first time. There was excitement around Christopher Lee, there was a lot of excitement around seeing Yoda's sword fight. There was a lot of positivity around this movie. What they bitched about were the romantic scenes, predictably, and it's a childish reaction that it's got old to even talk about it. Just like how Lucas predicted before Phantom Menace that the older fans wouldn't like the kid-friendly tone, he also predicted that they would complain about the romance in Attack of the Clones, which he said again and again he intended to be done in an old-fashioned 1940s movie style. And then when the movie came out, they all said exactly what he predicted that they would say, except that they all thought they were being original and incisive about the movie and telling him something that he didn't know. And that's how Star Wars fans always are. I mean, Attack of the Clones is great. Just like all the others that Lucas made, there's enough creativity in this movie for 5 movies by other more boring filmmakers. People just bitched that they were kids because they didn't like the kissing scenes. So, I mean, that's their loss. Oh well. So the hard part about ranking the first 6 Star Wars episodes is that I don't think any of them are bad, but one of them has to come at the end of the list, which seems like a criticism, but I don't really mean it that way. I mean, if anything, Empire Strikes Back is kind of a little miracle. At the time, it wasn't a given the sequels would do well. This one really could have tanked the whole series. This could have been the last Star Wars movie very easily. It must have been very tempting to play it safe, and that's exactly what Fox wanted Lucas to do. But instead, he made a film that's radically different than the first one. The heroes get knocked around, the major battle scene is at the beginning, all that stuff that's been talked about to death. And then in the middle of the movie, he spends a half an hour with Luke talking to a Muppet. I mean, this one is a little bit like A New Hope in that it's so embedded in our culture now that it's really easy to forget how surprising it is and what a disaster it could have been. And instead, it just all works. It just all works beautifully. By my own criteria, though, I think that out of the 6 episodes Lucas made, this one is the least successful because it's the one that's least close to his vision for Star Wars. I talk about this movie a lot more in my other video, but Empire does break some of the rules about how Star Wars movies are supposed to work in terms of camera work and so on and all that stuff. Not enough that it ruined the movie or that this doesn't seem like a Star Wars movie, but I always say that the way you're supposed to judge a piece of art is by how well the artist achieved its goals. And I think this one came out the furthest from what Lucas would have liked it to be. And of course, the prequel hater types have latched onto this one as the best one for those exact reasons, because they think that it shows that when Star Wars is good, it's good in spite of Lucas and not because of him. I think that what's actually going on is that deep down part of them knows that they should be embarrassed that their taste in movies hasn't evolved at all since they were 12. So they latch onto the one that they think is the darkest and thus the most mature. They think dark dark eagles mature. You see this all the time with superhero fans too. But the veneration of Empire is mostly a retroactive fiction created by these people, because at the time the reviews of Empire Strikes Back were very mixed, and many complained that it wasn't as fun as the first film. And that's true, even if it is an intentional change. I don't mind that Empire is different, and like I said before, part of the great thing about these movies is that they're all so different from each other. But this fanboy idea that dark equals better is childish nonsense. Okay, I bet you probably thought that we were going to get into the Disney era now, but you did forget a few movies. Seriously though, have you rewatched The Battle for Endor recently? I mean, I remember I loved this movie when I was a little kid, when I was really little. But honestly, I probably hadn't seen it in 25 years until I rewatched it to make this video. And I was ready to accept the conventional wisdom that the Ewok movies were terrible. If you do go rewatch it though, just adjust your expectations. If the Star Wars movies are for 12-year-olds, the Ewok movies are maybe more for 6-year-olds. And they're TV movies from about 35 years ago at this point. So no, the special effects aren't going to look like a new blockbuster movie. But you know what though, for a TV movie, there's a surprising amount of pretty awesome, Ray Harryhausen-esque creature design work going on here. There are several times that they introduced a creature and I figured we get, a couple establishing shots of them and then we wouldn't see them anymore because it would blow up the budget. But instead, there's actually a lot of awesome creature stuff going on and they come back again and again. I especially like whatever these T-Rex beast of burden things are supposed to be. There's this flying creature thing that they find in a cave, which is pretty cool. I like the evil guy's castle. That's all pretty great. I watched these movies a lot as a kid, and I think they influenced my ideas about Return of the Jedi, because if you think about it, really the only native creatures you see on Endor in Return of the Jedi are the Ewoks. But in my mind, those Endor forests were these wild primordial forests full of all these other weird creatures. I mean, the story here is pretty weird, and like I said, it's targeted for 6-year-olds. But think about other fantasy movies from the time. I mean, back then, fantasy movies were like Willow or Legend, and honestly, I was surprised when I rewatched this that I liked it better than either of those movies. The thing that's probably most off-putting here is how the opening of the movie pulls like an Alien 3 and it kills off Sindel's whole family after she spent the last Ewok movie trying to rescue them. But honestly, her parents were boring and her brother was mostly an annoying little snot, and it's pretty obvious that somebody just thought it would be better to have the movie focus on her and Wicket, and that's actually not a bad choice at all. So the Clone Wars movie is another tough one to rank because I know that the Clone Wars series eventually became pretty great, and this movie just wasn't there yet. But it's not really the movie's fault. Part of the problem is that this is just so obviously meant as 3 episodes of a show, not as a movie. I mean, you can clearly see where one episode begins and ends. The pacing is designed for 30-minute episodes, and many things end up seeming redundant as they're explained 3 or more times in case people miss the last episode. And it's the first 3 episodes of a show, and a lot of TV shows, especially animated TV shows, just take a while to find their footing. The animation isn't bad exactly, but you can see that they just haven't built up a large library of assets yet, and a lot of the sets are very bare. You're mostly seeing the same few droid models get cut up by the Jedi again and again. And that's a problem too, since the plot is threadbare and most of this movie is just long action scenes, and none of which are especially interesting. It really kind of just becomes a chore to sit through this. One thing I will say I love is Zero the Hutt. He's the one thing that really will show you that we're still in the George Lucas era of Star Wars here. Because, I mean, do you know how far somebody would get now if they went to Lucasfilm and said, okay, we want to do a new Hutt, but the idea is that he'll be gay and he's purple and he's got feathers and body paint and he talks like Truman Capote. I mean, Kathleen Kennedy would think that person was on drugs and they'd be fired faster than Colin Trevorrow. But that's the kind of thing that Lucas could do because, fuck you, he felt like it and he thought it was funny and so he did it. And it's actually hilarious. I love it. It's those kind of things that we can't have anymore. So out of the 2 Ewok movies, Caravan of Courage is definitely less good. But I don't think it's quite as horrible as it's made out to be. I mean, like I said, if Star Wars is for 12-year-olds, then the Ewok movies are more for 6-year-olds. The other change is that, while Star Wars is fantasy or a fairy tale with sci-fi trappings, this movie is almost just a pure fairy tale with almost no sci-fi. This first one also has less story than The Battle for Endor, and it seems like it had a lot less of a budget. There are a lot of scenes that look like exactly what they are, which is just a few people in teddy bear costumes kind of wandering around somewhere in Napa Valley up by Skywalker Ranch. Something like the spiders that attack them in the caves definitely look like a November sale in a Halloween store. But there are also some pretty creative creatures. I remember when I was a kid, I was really into whatever this werewolf pig thing was supposed to be. And there's this cool animal that is kind of like an anglerfish that lures people with an appendage that looks like a cute furry little tree creature, but he's really a big snake thing that grabs you when you get close. I mean, that was pretty fun. I mean, and of course as a kid, I really liked the Gorax, I think he's called. I'm not going to say this is a great movie or anything, but as a 1980s piece of TV entertainment for 6-year-olds, it really could be a lot worse than it is. I know the holiday special is pretty infamous, but I mean, I don't understand some of the complaints against it. Like, I always hear people saying there are long sequences that are just the Wookiees talking without subtitles, but they're not just talking. We also get long scenes of Wookiees walking, Wookiees playing. I think this is Atari maybe or something. We get like a 5-minute sequence of a Wookiee watching a cooking show that doesn't teach you how to cook. So I mean, there's lots of variety, right? I mean, seriously though, I'm not going to try to say the holiday special is good. The holiday special is very, very bad. But it also has like this extended sequence of Grandpa Wookiee masturbating and watching this AI sex concubine on a VR headset. I mean, seriously, if you've never watched the holiday special, we don't actually see Grandpa Itchy touch himself. But other than that, I'm not making up any of this.
I don't know how to explain it. Wow.
I know you're searching for me. Searching. I am here. My voice is for you alone. I am
The holiday
in
special.
your eyes only. I exist for you. I am in your mind as you create me. Oh, yes. I can feel my creation. Oh, we are excited, aren't we?
So, I mean, can you really deny the entertainment value here? There are long stretches that are pretty rough to sit through. But then there will be something that's, so batshit crazy that you have to watch it again just to make sure you didn't imagine it. And, as cheap as this special was, I gotta say, these Wookiees do look more like Wookiees to me than the fucking Planet of the Apes cosplay we got in Solo. So, it's not entirely without its merits. I've actually revised my opinion of The Force Awakens a lot since I originally saw it. I think this is the rare case where the sequel actually manages to damage the movie that came before it. I know people are probably just going to say that I'm a hater for everything in the Disney era, but that's really not true. I was really, really more than willing to give them a chance. When The Force Awakens came out, I even gave it a fairly positive review at the time. Even if I did point out that there were so many problems with the plot and the characters, I was still excited just to see the original trilogy characters back, and at first I enjoyed it. Here, JJ...
Well, that's about a little over half. So yeah, it's pretty interesting video for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna go ahead and end the stream because, like I said, I want to go read a book. So no one's
What you
watching
reading?
anyway. So, just Legacy of the Force still. So
Nice. I'm
thanks for joining.
reading. I'm currently reading
Go ahead.
Truce of Bakura.
Oh, I hope you enjoy it. I hope you are enjoying it, I guess.
Yeah, it's good.
Well, thanks for joining, Rave. No one else is watching, so you guys have a good night.
All right. See you guys later.